Right, gigantic. Now this card is disgustingly broken. It's not just gigantic, it's
It's it's huge!
hello YouTube, long time no see. But that's not important right now. The important thing right now is that today we are going to discuss one of the biggest, most disgusting decks that have come to Master Duel, and that is going to be Spright. Now, I'm going to be teaching you how to play Spright today. I'm going to try to keep the intro not too lengthy, but why do you care about playing Spright? Besides the fact that it's a disgustingly consistent and powerful deck that could remake its board immediately if it's broken, so round 2, round 3, up until you run out of extra deck resources. The real annoying thing out of Spright, if you really just want to play it for novelty or anything else, is that there's a little card in the game. It's a particularly good card. It's a little card by the name of Maxx. Now, Maxx, I'm pretty sure, is as you all know, is a fair, balanced, and fun card that has never cost anybody a game just by drawing this in their opening hand. But what if this card was searchable? Well, Spright answers that question pretty clearly, because with Spright, this card is searchable, and it's going to be one of the main combos that I'm going to show here today. Again, timestamps down below if you don't want to hear me ramble, or you're just looking for a good deck list, or whatever you may be looking for in particular. But basically, let's get right into the action, and let's teach you how to play Spright starting from scratch. Now here, I'm going to show you the 1.5 card combo. This card is insanely consistent, and the more resources you have in your hand, the better and stronger than it gets. But all you need for this combo is access to Spright Blue, and what makes this so strong, and I will repeat this down later in the video again just to drill it into people's heads, especially new players, but Spright Blue searches out any Spright monster, which can search out Spright Jet. Spright Jet can then search out any spell, which can search out Spright Starter, and Spright Starter being able to search out and special summon out any monster for the sprites, it can summon out Spright Blue. So it is just a loop. All you need is either access to Starter, like I have here, Spright Blue, or Spright Jet, and any level 2 summon you could get out in the field. Doesn't matter if it's a normal summon or a special summon. So we're going to be using the worst card in my hand for this, which is the Ronin Totem, which you do not want to draw typically, in order to do this combo. So pretend everything else isn't in my hand. These are the only 2 cards I opened. So I'm going to go ahead here and normal summon this Ronin Totem, which does nothing when it's normal summoned. Same if you normal summoned out your sprites, because they have to be special summoned. Then we will activate this Spright Starter, which will get us access to Spright Blue. Spright Blue is going to go ahead and hit the field here. Using its effect to search out a Spright monster, we're going to search out the Spright Jet. Again, you could search red or carrot for a monster or spell negate, but this is just the bare basics if you don't have any other combo pieces in your hand. Then we're going to summon out this Jet into the field, using Jet effect here in order to search out a spell. Now, the spell here you choose, they have a lot of possible strengths. If you didn't open with a Spright Starter, I do think it is smart to grab the Spright Starter if you opened with either Blue or Jet, because it'll allow you to summon out either carrot or red, getting you access to that negate. So since we did open with it, we have to consider other options. Gamma Burst is really good if you're going second and you're just going for big amounts of damage. This will boost all your level 2 and rank 2s, including your opponents, so be careful with that. And it'll really give you that extra oomph and let you close out games. This card is surprisingly crazy for how basic an effect this is. Then we have Spright Smashers. This card allows you to banish one of your level or rank 2s in order to banish one of your opponent's cards. It has 3 effects, but you're not playing Spriggans unless you're absolutely insane, so don't worry about that. And we're going to go ahead and grab Smashers here. Now, from here, we're going to make Spright Gigantic. Again, if you're going second, you could change the order and make Elf first, then use the Elf after you use its effect to summon the Gigantic, doubling its attack stat. But we're not going to worry about that going first. We're just going to go ahead and make Gigantic. It doesn't matter what you use for material right now in this current board state. And again, since we're going first, it's good to just get in the habit of summoning monsters in defense position so you don't get hit by Lightning Storm. We're then going to use Spright Gigantic effect, detaching a material. Doesn't matter what we detach, but let's get the blue in the graveyard for the following turn. We would detach the Ronin Totem typically if we had more combo plays, because by using the Swap Frog and sending any frog to the graveyard, we could actually special summon that Ronin Totem, but again, keeping it simple 2-card combo. We're gonna summon out one of our Spright negates. Let's go for the monster negate over the spell negate, just to keep it safe. Then from here, we're gonna go ahead and make ourselves our copy of Spright Elf. Spright Elf, we're gonna use the Gigantic for material, and we're gonna keep the red on board as long as possible, making ourselves our Spright Elf here. Then we're gonna use Spright Elf's effect in order to summon out any of our monsters. Does not matter which one. Summoning ourselves any level 2. Then from here, we're gonna go ahead and link off into the IP Masquerena. And just like that, with 1.5 card combo, we have access to either Apollosa or Avermax on our opponent's turn. And we have access to some combo continuation. I should have set the Smashers, apologies for that. If it would have set it face down, that would have been a banish, potentially, on our opponent's turn. We're going to ignore what our opponent's doing, pretend we don't have Ashen Hands. Activate Spright Elf effect here in order to summon out either Blue or Jet. Does not really matter which one. And then immediately chain the effective IP. Make sure the effective IP is activated second, because IP's effect happens immediately. Now from here, we're actually going to go with the Avermax, because Avermax cannot be attacked over by a special summon monster once per turn, making it really annoying to get over. And because we used IP as material, it's protected from destruction effects. That includes Raigeki, Lightning Storm, anything you could imagine. We get that Avermax onto the field, and then summon out our blue in defense position, activating its effect because it was special summoned. And searching ourselves out that copy of Jet, and just like that, we just got access to doing that same old combo over again next turn. Now let's move on to bigger and better things with the 2-card combo. Now let's get into the 2-card combo here. For this 2-card combo, all you're gonna need is access to Swap Frog, which there are a couple of ways of accessing in this deck. You could even do it with the Foolish Burial, but typically this is the card you really want to hard draw for this combo. And then access to Spright Blue. Again, you can access this card through either Spright Jet or Spright Starter. The Starter starts the combo as well, but these cards are just going to link into each other down the line. So they really do just go down a chain, and you'll always be going down this chain until you hit a repeat that you've already activated, because these cards are once per turn, and that's when you kick off into the second step of the combo. But anyways, less blib, less blab, and let's show off what it could do. So we're going to normal summon the Swap Frog here, activating Swap Frog effect, and this is gonna let us send our Ronin Totem to the graveyard. Now Ronin Totem is nice because it could special summon itself to the graveyard by banishing a frog, but sadly there's no frog in there just yet. So now that our Ronin Totem is in the graveyard, we're gonna go ahead and special summon ourselves our copy of Spright Blue. Again, we could have started with a starter, which would have summoned Blue as well, but same old, same old. Blue is going to activate its effect here and go ahead and search us a copy of Spright Jet. Spright Jet is going to go into our hand, and we're going to activate Spright Jet, now getting its effect off as well in order to search our deck for a spell card. Now, I already have Starter in hand. I also have Carrot, which could give me some spell or trap protection, protect against cards like Imperm, but I'm showing off 2-card combos, so we're going to pretend these 3 cards don't even exist. We're going to go ahead and search Spright Starter from our deck, and then carry on from here. Now, we're going to go ahead and go into our extra deck, and we're going to make Spright Gigantic. Now, this card is disgustingly broken. It's not just gigantic, it's huge! We're gonna make Spright Gigantic here. Now, the first material matters a ton here. We need to use the Swap Frog to make this. The second material, not so much. You can go ahead and use whatever. We're gonna make Gigantic hit the board. Since we're going first, we're gonna just get in the habit of putting stuff in defense position. It does get a damage boost, and you typically want to summon this in attack if you use the Spright Elf card to make it, because it will double your monster's attack, but again, we're not worrying about that just yet. So we're gonna activate Spright Gigantic's effect, and here another point to be careful at. Once you activate Spright Gigantic, neither player will be able to summon anything higher than level 2 or rank 2. That means no link 3s and above. Your opponent can't summon Nibiru, the primal being, and destroy your board. You as well won't be able to special summon anything above level 2. But we're going to go ahead and select itself to detach a material, and specifically we must detach the Swap Frog here, because our friend will be paying us another visit. Gigantic is so strong because you can special summon out cards like Blue and Jet and get your combo started as well, but we're going to be searching out the Maxx so we could add it back to hand. But you're looking right now and you're thinking, why is my Maxx on the field? Well, we're about to get to that. Now here we're going to go ahead and do a little bit reverse order, and instead of using the elf to make Gigantic, we're going to use Gigantic and that Spright Jet in order to make the elf. And again, positioning has not mattered up until this point, but starting the following steps is going to be a little more important. Be sure you do not use the Maxx to make the Spright Elf. You can use anything on your field, but the Maxx has got to stay so we could add it back. So now we're going to activate Spright Elf, which basically acts like a Monster Reborn and lets you summon back a card from the graveyard, and we're going to choose our good old friend Swap Frog. Now, at this point in the combo, Spright Elf has a nice little effect that anything its arrows point to cannot be targeted, meaning it can't be hit by cards like Effect Veiler, and it cannot be hit by cards like Infinite Impermanence. But again, if your opponent was really going to do that at this point in the combo, they probably would just hit the Spright Elf instead. We're going to summon ourselves out a little Swap Frog and use its effect once more, this time to send a copy of itself to the graveyard. Be sure not to send itself, because we will use that. And send another copy of it so Ronin Totem has some material in order to summon itself out. So now we're going to go ahead and activate our little friend Ronin Totem now that he has a frog to banish, banishing that Swap Frog we just sent, and summoning itself to the field. Now again, off this 2-card combo, the only card I should have in my hand, if those were the only 2 cards in my hand, would be this copy of Spright Starter. So now we're going to activate the Swap Frog effect, selecting the Maxx. This is going to allow us to normal summon another frog, but again, we do not care about this effect in the slightest. We're just using it in order to get Maxx back into our hand, and just like that, our hand is Spright Starter and Maxx. Now here we're going to go ahead and overlay these two. Typically you'd want to make Totally Awesome. It'd be really broken, and it would disrupt your opponent, but sadly that card is banned in Master Duels. We're gonna go ahead and make IP Masquerena instead. You cannot use Spright Elf as material the turn it is summoned, but that doesn't mean you can't use it for material in the following turns. It doesn't really matter where you place the IP, but she is protected by the Spright Elf effect, which is pretty nice. And now we'll activate ourselves that copy of Spright Starter, which is the other card in our hand. So we're going to use this to search out either Spright Red or the Spright Carrot, which is currently in my hand, but again, we're pretending that I just had 2 cards in my opening hand. And it really just depends, do you want the monster protection or do you want the spell and trap protection? I typically think that in the current meta, the monster protection is going to be more valuable because you're not going to be able to negate cards like Forbidden Droplets or Dark Ruler no more anyways. So it's a bit more beneficial to take the monster protection. Now, these do just negate, but if you tribute a rank 2 or a link 2, like one of your Link monsters or your Gigantic or even your Cat Sharks, it will also destroy. But again, with this end board, we don't really have access to that destroy unless you're really desperate and confident that destroying that card is the right card. But yeah, we're just going to bring out the red. You can do this earlier in the combo to protect yourself against cards like Nibiru, since this is just a tutorial guide and it might mislead people into thinking they have an extra layer of protection, since this card cannot tribute itself for cost in order to use its effect. But just like that, we're ending our board on Spright Elf, IP Masquerena, and Spright Red. This board is mediocrely strong enough as it is. It's really annoying to get over without a Kaiju, which can just eat your cards. But on top of that, you also have Maxx in hand, which means every summon your opponent makes, and they're going to have to make a lot of summons to try to get over this board, you're going to get more and more resources drawing you into your Nibiru, into your Ash Blossom, into your Gammas, which don't do anything right now, but again, you could always IP into Lambda if you really wanted to, but that's a bit kooky. And just like that, your opponent is not going to be breaking this 2-card combo unless they drew so cracked that you weren't winning this game anyways. Now, just like that, let's get into the deck list. I'm going to try to speed this part up because I already rambled a good amount, but I will be giving descriptions on why I'm choosing to run the cards that I run because each Spright list is going to look a bit different. Now, I am running the Driver Gamma package, not only because I think it's really, really strong and one of the most impactful cards you could run in this current meta, but also because this is a beginner introduction, and this is one of the most impactful hand traps you can run in the game. Cards like Ash Blossom can be played around, but cards like Gamma, once they hit the field, there is a much, much higher chance that it's going to completely shut off your opponent's turn, because it doesn't just negate, it destroys. Then 3 copies of Swap Frog with the 1 copy of Ronin Totem. These cards are absolutely mandatory in Spright. They're so strong, they let you make so many extensions. A lot of the other packages are optional, and it sucks that we lost Totally Awesome. Well, it doesn't, I actually hate this deck, but this package is absolutely mandatory. 3 copies of Maxx. It is the best hand trap in the game. There is no reason you shouldn't be running this. I'll say this in every video. If you could run at least 3 different hand traps in your deck and aren't a super tight list that can only run 2 different kinds of hand traps, it's mandatory you run the Maxx. We run the 1 copy of Nimble Angler. This card's going to be a lot better when the new Spright link comes out in the future, but for right now, it's just kind of mediocre-ish. But if it does go off by drawing it in your opening hand, you discard it with a Swap Frog, or if it's in the deck, you send it off with the Foolish Burials, etc., etc. This card is disgusting because it just gives you access to 2 of your Nimble Beavers basically for free, and it'll just get better in the future, but just 1 right now because we don't have that new link. 3 copies of Nimble Beaver, just an insanely good normal summon giving you out 2. You could run the Isakill Kisakill live twin package, but I think that's a bit too much of a commitment, and the package itself just is not good. Not to mention it's a lot more expensive, but if you really like the live twins, go ahead and run them instead, but Nimble Beaver is honestly better. And you're really just, you gotta run a Beaver, bro. Like, look at the little dude, he's just vibing. Then after that, we run 3 copies of Spright Blue. Don't cut this down to 2 unless you're playing Tri-Spright or some weird variant. Spright Blue is just insane. This card is definitely going to be the one that gets hit in this deck in the future. It's just good. Run it at 3. You want to see it as much as you can. Same with Spright Jet. Basically, again, Blue, Jet, and Starter are the combo starters. So if you see any of those 8 cards, you're probably gonna pop off. 1 copy of Red, 1 copy of Carrot. You can run 2 of Red, but these Spell and Trap negates are so easily searchable that it's really just not worth it to run multiple copies of them. 1 is good enough. You don't want to brick drawing multiple of these because, again, they're just not as good as the starters, because even though they'll give you the protection, there's a lot of ways to search them, and you're not going to be hit by that much disruption that you can't deal with in other ways in this deck. 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 2nd best hand trap in the game. I know this is typically around the point where, before tier, when Ash Blossom fell off in the TCG, but especially in a card game where we have Maxx at 3, Ash Blossom is mandatory because it is a way to respond to Maxx, and nobody wants to lose to Maxx, especially with just how I showed that you could search Maxx now, even though I don't think a lot of people are going to be doing that combo and just kind of monkeying the board. 1 copy of Nibiru. Nibiru is just a good card. You only really need 1 copy because you have a good chance of seeing it off Maxx. Otherwise, you might not even want to draw it, because it gets stopped by Gigantic and a bunch of things in the Spright Mirror. But also, this card is good because if you draw the Crossout Designator, you have the 1 copy of it, so you can stop your opponent from Nibiruing you. 2 copies of Lightning Storm is just a good going 2nd card. You could also run the Dark Ruler No More, which I actually maybe recommend more than... It just kind of depends on your preferred playstyle, but Dark Ruler No More is also really good. 2 copies of Emergency Teleport. This card's insane. It gives you an extra extender if somehow they pop DPE or pop your 1 card that's on the field, so you can no longer do your Spright combo. It's the reason why we run the Gamma package, but if you don't like Gamma, you could cut this for Ghost Ogres, so you still have a Psychic monster to summon off of the Emergency Teleport. It's just preference. I don't think Ogre is that good, though, with the Adventure Engine being cut from every deck. 2 Called by the Graves, again, just don't get Maxx, stop your opponent from hand trapping you. 1 copy Crossout Designator, same philosophy, but it also stops Nibiru and Imperm. Imperm on your Elf, Imperm on your Gigantic can really hurt a lot, so it's just nice to be able to have a way to stop the Imperms. 2 copies of Starter. You'd run this at 3, obviously, if you could, but Konami decided to do an early nerf, even though this nerf really ain't gonna do nothing. But again, it's all in good fun. Getting to try out the deck in full power is gonna be really enjoyable for most people. 1 copy of Gamma Burst. I do think you need to run this at least 1. Having this guarantee you could close out games if you're going 2nd or on follow-up turns, because of how easily searchable it is insane. The attack boost you gain from this cannot be ignored. Like, it just turns all your board of mediocre monsters into absolute menaces. It's really dumb, and it'll let Gigantic get over cards like Dragoon, which isn't in the game, but like, it just gives it immense amount of attack stat. One copy is Smashers, again for searchable banish removal, which could be really good for stopping a lot of decks. It's just generic and, well, around good. Two copies of Infinite Impermanence, good generic hand trap, and a good one to hit with cross out designator so you don't get hit by it. Oh, and last but not least, I forgot to describe the Foolish Burial. You honestly do not need this card. If you cut the Foolish Burial, you might as well go ahead and cut the Nimble Angler, but I just think Nimble Angler is so powerful. This also can send a lot of other powerful things, like sending the Swap Frog to the graveyard to allow you to combo more if you have the right hand. You can send a blue or a jet if you could somehow only make an elf and your Gigante got stopped, and you could just summon it off elf and combo off. I think this card is really underrated in the deck and just generally good, but again, you don't need to run it. Getting onto the extra deck, this is going to be a lot more niche than the main deck, and people are going to have more disagreements, but I think that this is the best stuff you can run in the extra deck. The only card I would even consider running instead of these is maybe cutting the Unicorn or cutting the number 65 for the Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, but for what I'm running number 65. This is just a general negate. You need to use both materials for it, and they both need to be darks, but again, a lot of your sprites are darks, so you just kind of have to plan around it. Cat Shark, this is really good because of how annoying it is to remove this from the field if it uses a water. Not to mention that the attack boost can be really valuable because most of your monsters are just generally aren't that big without getting buffed up. Mannequin Cat, a card that was memed out a lot. A lot of people were shocked when this ended up being so good in the TCG, but it allows you to extend combos. The card that you special summon off it doesn't actually have to match the typing of what you summon from your opponent's graveyard. You just need to find that typing at all on your opponent's board, and Dark is insanely common. Two copies of Gigantic. Do not sleep on the Gigantic and Elf. You need to run it at a minimum of 2. I know that they're URs and it's expensive, but you need these cards at 2. It's your entire combo and it gives you follow-up. Honestly, if you open more of them, you could run them at 3. I think that's a bit overkill, but they're strong cards. Zeus. Zeus isn't critical, but it's just a generically really good card, and you will see this card winning you games, and when you do, you'll be happy that it's in your deck, although not mandatory. Phoenix, good generic removal and easy link 2 to make, doesn't get locked out by the link 2 restriction that you get with Gigantic. Lambda, another good link 2. If you cut the Gamma package, obviously cut the Lambda, but you could even run Cerberus, Nightmare Cerberus, but Lambda is just generic and good, and it could even bait your opponent into thinking you have removal. IP, I think that this is the most important non-sprite card you could run in the deck, this being number 1 and Avermax being number 2 and Zeus being number 3, not including the mandatory Gigantic and Elf. It just gives you access to some really simple generic plays and makes for some really powerful boards, since you can't use Spright Elf to link off during the same turn you made it. Dark is just a good generic link too, lets you steal your opponent's DPE, and if you steal your opponent's DPE, they're in for a bad time. It's one of the easiest ways to deal with that annoying card. Spright Elf, again, mandatory at 2, you could even run it at 3, just don't cut it down to 1. If you make Gigantic using Elf as material, it doubles its attack, and again, just lets you combo off on your opponent's turn. Kind of combo off, just get material. One copy of Unicorn, easy to make with the IP, good spot removal, not mandatory at all, so if you're running low on UR dust, I would cut the Unicorn and maybe the Apollosa if you're really desperate, but Apollosa is a good generic couple of negates. And the Avermax. I think Avermax is really important here because of how pub stompy it is and how annoying it is to get over if your opponent doesn't plan correctly. This card is a UR, but I believe you could get it from the story mode for free. I might be wrong though, that might just be the other Mech Knights, but it's worth checking out. Otherwise I'm a liar. I'll pin it down below when somebody lets me know if you can or can't do it. But that is gonna be it for Spright. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Now normally this is the part of the video where I tell you to tell me what to play, but please comment at the bottom of the video anyways, because I haven't posted in a long time and this video is definitely gonna die with no engagement. So please, shoddy, please. In the future, I am going to be covering a couple other decks. Subscribe if you're interested. There's some decks that I absolutely love. Exo Sister, mandatory I cover before Tier comes out. I need to cover the bird version of Spright, which is also going to be really crazy. I need to cover the Brave engine, which is really nerfed in Master Duel, but I think it's still good, especially if you happen to craft these because of just how generically good they are. You might have these URs lying around and not even be putting them into a deck when it's a good way to just farm free wins at lower mid ladder. And yeah, but after that, let me know what you're interested in. Let me know what you thought of the video. Just leave leave a comment. Don't make me bribe you for a comment. Like, I haven't posted in a hot minute. I need that engagement. Whew! I'm cooking for some engagement. But thank you for watching the video. Thank you for enjoying. It has been Rojas. I'm gonna be posting once a week again, so good to be back to YouTube. Let's clown on some fools, beat them up. Actually, Rhymestyle made a mistake and released a video with a very bad deck, so I gotta bring the Pimp Your Deck Back series soon and make a real good Dark Magician deck I'm real excited about. And let me know y'all general feels. Thank you for checking out. If I see any familiar faces in the comments, that's a bonus. Cool to see y'all, and peace.